All right.
When dealing with new groups of folks, when do you do decentralized command? Right away or gradually? As in, slowly give them trust or slowly take it away as needed?
Again, this is a good, solid question. This is something that people ask on a fairly regular basis, and it's a pretty straightforward answer. Okay, you can't obviously just right away just give people full autonomy, because you have to build it up somewhat incrementally, give them the opportunity to be on their own now. And what you're really building, with decentralized command is you're building trust. And that's what you're trying to do. And as I've said before, the best way to build trust is to give trust. But before you give trust, you've got to set expectations. You got to set standards. You got to set guidelines, because this person that you're this is a new person. They might be a crazy. They might be incompetent. They might have a totally different vision of what's okay than you. They might be unethical. There's all kinds of things that they might be that you cannot allow for. So what you have to do is set those standards, set those guidelines, and put those guardrails in place, so that you make sure that this person is ethical, make sure that they are professional, make sure that they do have the same standards, make sure that they understand the expectations you set for them. And that's when you can start to hand out more slack and more ownership, because we don't want to micromanage. When I talk about parameters, I'm not talking about telling people exactly how to do it. But let's say you and I started working together and you were my subordinate. If we fast forward 2 years from now, I'd be like, hey, Echo, this is what we're trying to get done. Make it happen. I'll, check back with me when it's done. Mm-hmm. Right? That's how much leeway I'm giving you. I don't even care. Mm-hmm. But when we first start working together, I'm going to be like, hey, Echo, here's what we want to get done. Can you come up with a plan and then let me know? Let me take a look at what you're going to do. Boom. Now, I'm still letting you fully own the plan, but I'm going to do a little check. I'm going to make sure that it's the right gym. I'm going to make sure it's a good plan. I'm going to make sure it's a smart plan. I'm going to make sure it handles our resources correctly. So all those things, I'm just going to, and then the more we work together, the more we build the trust, the more you understand the expectations, the less guidance I'm going to give you, the less oversight I'm going to give you. Yeah. Because you've built up trust with me, and I've built up trust with you. So that's important. I also want you to be able to make your own decisions, because I don't want to be making decisions all the time, So even in the first scenario, when I've been working with you for a long time, I say, hey, Echo, go figure this out. You go handle it. You get it done. When we first start working together, you might come to me and say, hey, Jocko, I hit this wall. What do you want me to do here? What do you think I'm going to say?
Figure it out.
I'm going to say, figure it out. I'm going to say, hey, man, I don't know. What's your best guess? Or how would you do it? Or, if we knew each other a little bit better, I'd say, hey, man, don't come asking me those questions. Go figure that out. I don't care how you do it. Just get around that wall. Yeah. Boom. And we're done. And now one other key part of this is, oftentimes if you take over a new team, you may want to start off by setting the example. By running the perfect operation, by going from end to end with some project that you set the standard on how you want things to be. So everybody looks at you and goes, okay, I see how he did that. Whoa, he wants that done. He holds the line on that. So that way everybody knows what the standard is. So there's, and I would always, when I start off, when I take over a platoon, take over a squad, like, okay, we're doing this operation. Cool. Here's how I would run it. Very distinctly, very clearly be the guy. Yeah. And then as time goes on and trust develops, I'm going to become less and less the guy and more the decentralized leader that's stepping back and letting the frontline troopers lead. That's what I'm going to try and make happen. As always, when you do start with a new group, it's real easy. Be humble, listen, take advice, ask questions. Ask good questions about things that if there's something you don't understand, ask the question, no big deal. Make the slow incremental changes like Hackworth talks about in Steal My Soldier Starter. You're just going to change 2 things a day. Not going to change the whole world overnight. You can't do it. So he's going to change 2 things a day. That being said, he also did some major, if you remember this Hackworth, he gets in there and the guys have radios and they got guitars and they got all this stuff. And he goes, yeah, put all that stuff in the middle of the compound. It's out of here tomorrow. right? That was a major change.
Mm-hmm.
So he went and kind of shook him up a little bit, but then he goes, okay, now I got to go the long war. I'm going to change 2 little things a day. And that's what he did. So sometimes it's a combination of those two. Sometimes you got to send a little shock value. Like, hey, new sheriff in town. That's what they used to say in the SEAL teams. A new commanding officer would come over. If he would do, a lot of times they do something to assert their presence.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, I'm here now. No more parking in the back lot. You know what I mean? Or, hey, new CO, I just took over. No more wearing this uniform to this place. Okay. So everyone go, okay, new sheriff in town.
Mm-hmm.
Let's let him get this out of his system.
Oh, so do they typically react in that way where they're like that's I see what you're doing there,
yeah,
but it's cool.
Pretty much in SEAL teams, it would be like, oh, okay, yeah, hey, new sheriff in town. Hey, he just came up with a new rule for us to follow, so we know he's here. Cool.
Right.
Like, that was.
So it's not like it's not like some resentment or nothing.
Maybe the guys that are less mature, I hate to use that word, but maybe guys that weren't quite as in the game would be like, man, what's he doing this for?
Yeah.
Maybe, hey, bro, don't worry about it. It's a new sheriff in town.
That's
He's letting us know where he's here.
Yeah.
You know, he's got it.
Yeah.
I mean, we got it. So we're all good.
yeah, that's cool.
But occasionally you get somebody that comes in. You notice the things that I just said were fairly irrelevant. Like, hey, don't wear this uniform to there, or hey, don't park in this part. Whatever. Those are fairly inconsequential things, and those things are okay, actually. But occasionally you'd see somebody come in and try and do execute some kind of a fundamental change, and that's where you go, wait a second, man. You've been here for a day and a half and you want to execute a fundamental change on what we're doing here? We have a problem with that. We as the troops have a problem with that, because you don't know. How do you know?
Yeah.
I've been doing this I was at SEAL Team 1 for 8 years. You know, you're going to show up. I've been here for 5 years. You're going to tell me how it's better to do this? Yeah. And that might not be the right attitude for a young guy like myself to have, but that's the attitude that you're going to generate if you come in and try and make fundamental changes without assessing.
Yeah.
So show some tactical patience when you come in and say, okay, let me check this out. Again, just to refer back to the Hackworth story, Hackworth was going in to take over a battalion that was all jacked up. They were called the Hopeless, right? And he wanted to turn them into the Hardcore. So his shocking thing that he did was meant to shock. And it was also meant to square them away, and it was also the right thing to do, and they also had a bad reputation. If he went in and took over a really good battalion, he wouldn't go in there with the same shock and awe type treatment, because they don't need it.
Yeah.
So you gotta think about what you're doing. But in most cases, unless you're taking over some kind of a problem situation, there you might have to use a little shock and awe. If you're taking over a normal situation, the boss got promoted, you're going to go into this role, hey, no problem. Come in there, be humble, listen. Then as you see fit, make some small incremental changes. Yeah,
like the shock and awe thing will probably work against you in a normal situation.
Oh yeah, it'll definitely work against you. It'll definitely work against you. Now think about it. Now you're imposing a plan on people.
Yeah.
People don't like to have plans imposed upon them. They don't like it.
Yeah.
They don't like it. Even the big controlled military where everyone's in a chain of command. No one in the military likes to have big new ideas imposed upon them without thought and without assessment and without explanation and without telling people why. No, you don't do that.
Yeah.
And that what you want to do is, by doing all those things, by building that trust, by setting the standards, by setting the guidelines, by putting the guardrails in place, by listening, by respecting, by being humble, what you will do is you will lead people to lead themselves. And that's what you want.
Yeah, man. Yeah, explaining why I feel like that's maybe an underappreciated thing.
I'll tell you what, it's not underappreciated in my book. That's the absolute. That's a critical piece.
Oh yeah, even
explaining to people why they're doing what they're doing.
You could go in and, really, when you think about it, you could go in and change some fundamental thing if you explain why, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But just like how you're saying, if you roll in and you make a fundamental change, everyone's like, bro, we were doing it that way for a reason, and you just came and changed it. But if you explain why and they understand, it makes more sense.
And you get feedback, because maybe what you said is the wrong decision. Right? You might be saying something that's like, well, you know what, you didn't think that through really all that well.
Yeah.
And you need to discuss this with the troops and figure out what their assessment of your call is.
Yeah. Yeah, again, one of those things where when we talk about it like this, it's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But it's, I don't know. It seems.
You know what's funny is on the podcast, just as an example, we talked fairly shortly about going to the podcast once every 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't really give a good explanation of why. And you know what feedback I got? It was like, hey, you got to be kidding me. Yeah, wait, no, this thing comes out on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Jocko. Well, I don't know what your problem is. The podcast comes out on Wednesday. And I got that feedback from numerous people, not only on social media, but also in face-to-face. You know, people that texted me and called me and said, bro, you can't go to once a week. Yeah. And there was people that would say, hey, first of all, if you're going to do that, you need to set some kind of warning. You need to let people know. We need some time. So it was funny. But the essential thing that I did not do is say, hey, guys, here's what's going on. Here's why I would want to do this in a different way. And I didn't really explain that. You know, we just kind of, because it wasn't an actual decision that was getting made. It was a consideration. The consideration has been revoked, by the way. We're holding the line. We're holding the line. And when we do have to do that, which may or may not happen, but I will explain why in great detail so everyone understands where I'm coming from. Because I don't want to leave anybody hanging.
Yeah, they're going to hit you up. They're going to be like, hey, Jocko, I feel like you don't really understand what's going on here. You know?
On the front lines?
Yeah, you don't.
On the front lines. We waiting for that podcast, son.
You know.
Awesome.